Right. Good morning on the West Coast. Good afternoon on the East. And welcome to The Buzz. This is Studio W, The Buzz, your global radio network. We circle this thing 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, with some of the finest programs you can find anywhere around the world. And now it's time for tax tips, the world on finance with your tax advisor, Mr. Everett James. Good morning, sir.
Good morning. Now, how am I coming from the West Coast?
Oh, you're coming loud and clear.
Thank you.
It's just like you were next door.
Yes.
Okay. All right, Ev. I'm sure you got a lot to discuss today, but I've got a quick question. The
Yes.
audience has been asking: when it comes to these tariffs, who pays the tariffs? Are they foreign countries? Are the importers? I mean, the exporters paying the tariffs, or are the importers that's coming in? The goods is coming in. Do the importers here pay the tariffs and pass them on to the consumer?
Mhm. Okay, that's an excellent question, and I will provide information from the authorities at next week's program.
All right, sounds great. I'll step aside.
Thank you so much, Mr. Brown, and welcome, listening audience. This is Everett James, your trusty tax reporter from the West Coast, and broadcasting every Wednesday. As the owner of the station, the podcast station, has just pointed out, that we come on again at 10 a.m. on the West Coast, and on the East Coast it's 1 p.m. We're here, not only for your edification and education, but we're also here to provide individualized responses to questions that you may have. So please feel free to contact me, Ev James, that's EV, JAMES, at 951 And the email is evjtax1 at gmail.com. I'll be glad to repeat those phone numbers before the end of this hour. To begin with, let us first mention that the government is open, but let's face it, folks, from the government shutdown date, reaching 43 days, eclipsing the previous record of 35 days. The Even though things are open, they're only open temporarily, and so do not get comfortable. The deal that was made will fund the government until the end of January. Well, guess what happens if they don't reach an agreement? By the end of January 31st of 2026, what happens? Well, the government will shut down again. So we're facing, wow, folks, we're facing basically after this 2 month, really, really very temporary interim agreement, we're facing another full government shutdown just approximately 2 months away. Wow. How's that for government, I should say, legislative efficiency? Something needs to be changed in that arrangement. This has been, our government has been shut down too many times, and it looks as though we may be facing a longer shutdown if a more permanent agreement for the fiscal year coming up, 2026, is not reached by January 31st of this coming year, 2026. So, folks, before we get into some more of the meat of the problem, just keep in mind that the government thus far, the sticking point between the two sides of the aisle doesn't need to really be totally explain, but I can guarantee you that it has to do with the expanded subsidies for the so-called Affordable Care Act. Well, keep in mind that if subsidies are needed for people to afford the premiums from the very onset of that program, what more proof is needed that Obamacare is neither affordable or sustainable? Okay, folks, with that, I do want to just take a few steps aside here and promote a local baseball team for 9 and 10-year-olds that I've been mentioning over the past few weeks. It's called the Riverside United Baseball Club. Well, these are for these young 9 and 10-year-old kids have been playing so well that they've received a number of invitations, and they just got notice just recently that they have been invited to participate out of state at another tournament in Arizona. This will be the second time that they've been invited to the tournament out of state. Fortunately, the tournament itself has seen fit to pick up the hotel costs for the players and the team parents. Isn't that beautiful? And what a and if you can just keep this in mind that we are in the Christmas giving, Thanksgiving, Christmas giving season. What a beautiful way to show your love for making it possible for economically deprived young people to get an early start in life, which will fulfill their vocational desires and dreams when you come right down to it, not to mention the dreams of their parents. What if you were in a similar position, if you had a son or daughter for that matter, who was participating and could not or was being currently on the sidelines because the existing finances just simply would not fund the costs. So I'm this reporter is asking you please to consider during this Christmas season of giving of some kind of a either financial contribution or in-kind donation. Folks, and there's lots of ways to help the team. If cash is not available from your pockets, keep in mind that the team would be so appreciative of some in-kind donations, such as matching team cleats, matching team matching helmets, team jerseys, and batting gloves. So they're also hoping to get the team matching equipment bags. Uh, so please step forward and help us. And in order to do that, you can call Cicely and Jason Wooten, Wooten. I hope I'm pronouncing that Cicely correct, but it's spelled Cecily. Cicely, and she handles a lot of the administrative activities. Her phone number, please take it down, 951-534-3838. That's 951-534-3838. Okay, if you didn't have a pencil with me mentioning that, please contact me through the regular program number for posing questions. Please contact me for additional information about how you can help this very, very deserving team. And keep in mind that they just I got another invitation for a big tournament in Arizona coming up soon, and we'll need the help in many ways. Um, yeah, the tournament itself is actually um, waiving the fees and also picking up the hotel costs. Wow. Okay, folks, we um, will be focusing now, on the situation that we are in. Wow, this is this is really really something. Here we are at the beginning of December 2025, and what does that mean? Well, that means that we have approximately 3 weeks. 1, 2, 3. Well, we actually make it 1, 2, 3, 4 weeks uh, before the end of the calendar year. Um, Actually, 3 weeks, 10, 7, 7, yeah, 3 weeks before the end of the calendar year. And if I have that right, 1, 2, 3, I know I got it right the first time. Well, approximately 3 to 4 weeks before the end of the official tax filing year. What does that mean? That means that uh, you are now going to be faced with the reality of having to account for your income and hopefully cutting back on the tax results through your expenses. And how are you going to do that? Well, it really can't make up um, easily for having neglected this particular item on your errand list. You really can't make up for 11 months of inactivity on your part. But there are some things that we will focus on to make this job less painful. The and so we will focus on some of the benefits of the recently passed one big beautiful bill that got passed on the July 4th of this year. So the but keep in mind that the deal that they reached is not does not mean there are clear skies ahead. Just on the contrary, the deal only keeps everything open as I mentioned, until January 31st. Wow, 2 months, folks. If Congress can't agree to fund the government past that date, what happens? It all shuts down this coming February 1st. And of course, the biggest sticking point is healthcare. Specifically, what are we talking about? Enhanced Obamacare subsidies. And as I mentioned, the subsidies for this program have been needed ever since the program was passed by the National uh, House of Representatives and the Senate. But subsidies were needed right at that point for folks who were covered. Subsidies were needed at that point from the very onset. So, again, what more proof is needed that Obamacare is neither affordable or sustainable? From what this reporter has learned, the GOP is not likely to readily approve any permanent or even long lasting subsidy to a program that has been deemed as unaffordable and unsustainable from the very beginning. So the biggest sticking point again is the healthcare issue, um, that the subsidies that have been temporarily approved to last until the end of this year. They approved by both sides of the aisle to last until December 31st of 2025. Well, the that may we may reach that date at the end of this month, in which they really can't come to any kind of an agreement. The And then we're looking at a sizable group of people who have been buying this health insurance through the marketplace, and they are going to be facing premiums essentially that are totally unmanageable. All of those improvements and extensions of subsidies had been will cease, and fewer people will actually qualify for the premium tax credit. Now, the premium tax credit is provided for folks with modified adjusted gross incomes ranging from 100% to 400% of the poverty level. For the period 2021 through the end of this year, 2025, some folks with higher modified AGIs also qualify, and the credit is higher for many individuals. So, beginning in 2026, unless Congress takes action, the rules revert to those that were in place for pre-2021 years, so that only people with modified AGIs between 100% and 400% of the poverty level can actually claim that premium tax credit. The prior to 2021, that tax credit was available to people, as I mentioned, who fell within that modified adjusted gross income range. And of course, so beginning in 2026, unless Congress takes action, beginning in 2026, which is only coming up in 3 to 4 weeks, the rules revert to those rules that were in place for 4 years prior to 2021 years. So folks, the rules revert. So only people that have that modified adjusted gross income between 100% and 400% of the poverty level can claim the premium tax credit. And since that range, you have to fit into that range to get the premium tax credit. Please contact your tax advisors and plan for this event to get your income down, if that's necessary, to fall between 100% and 400% of the poverty level. So most people who qualify for the premium tax credit generally opt to have the credit placed in advance directly to the health insurance company, and that allows them to lower their monthly premium payment. A lot of individuals who are now looking for 2026 coverage are getting sticker shock when they go online and see that they either no longer qualify for the premium tax credit, or the credit amount is lower, substantially lower. That makes their 2026 monthly insurance premium much higher than they expected, and in many cases, just plain unaffordable. This will lead to more uninsured people in the United States. A lot of congressional Democrats want that expansion made permanent. That's one of the primary reasons the shutdown continued for as long as it did. But keep in mind that that deal to reopen the government, it did not renew the expiring premium tax credit easings. It only included a promise that the Senate would vote on the premium tax credit by the end of this year. Keep in mind, again, the deal they reached didn't really renew those premium tax credit subsidies. All it did, it just included a promise that they would vote on this thing by the end of the year, end of this year. So what will happen now? The ball is pretty much in President Trump's court. Although permanent extension of those expansions is now likely this to be off the table, there are moderate Republicans in the House and Senate who would support a deal to temporarily extend them, especially if any pact comes with additional changes. For example, a bipartisan House bill would extend those enhancements for another 2 years and make some other changes. And so Trump is asking Republican lawmakers to quickly revamp the Obamacare subsidies, which is not likely to happen. At the same time, he's saying he would be open to temporarily extending the expiring premium tax credit expansion subject to certain conditions. So it's some of the pundits think it's more likely than not the Congress will wind up renewing some of those premium tax credit extensions, maybe for a year or two. That would at least avert a second government shutdown. But as they say, if the bipartisan deal cannot be reached on that premium tax credit issue, if it cannot be reached before January 31st of next year, then all bets are off. And speaking about premiums and taxable benefit plans, folks, look at your health flexible spending account. If you're employed and you have a health flexible spending account, you have to use it up by December 31st. If your employer has not implemented the 2.5-month grace period. What's the 2.5-month grace period? Well, that's 2.5 months into the new year, and that gives you additional time, 2.5 months into the new year, to use any money that's left in your account, but also consider contributing to a flexible spending account for 2026. You can put into a flexible spending account up to $3,400 during the year, and that will cover all of your out-of-pocket medical costs. Amounts that you contribute to a flexible spending account, they escape federal income tax and payroll tax. Again, if you do set up that flexible spending account, you don't have to deal with and not subject to federal income tax and payroll tax. If you're a working parent who would qualify for the dependent care credit, now that's a little different than the child tax credit. But if you might qualify for the dependent care credit, that's generally folks and single and married who do have dependents, legitimate child tax care credits dependents. If you do have dependents and you're working, see if your employer offers a dependent care benefit option, a flexible spending account, a benefit option that you could fund with pre-tax wages. Beginning next year in 2026, working parents can put up to $7,500 in a dependent care flexible spending account. the limitation for this type of spending account for this year, 2025, is $5,000. So it jumps up to $3,400 for 2026. The So that's I'm sorry. Let me correct the 2025 limitation was $25,000. It's $5,000 for 2025. In 2026, it has been increased from $5,000 up to $7,500. It was increased another $2,500. So, folks, don't expect to get a tariff stimulus check from the federal government. I think President Trump has been floating the idea of a $2,000 tariff refund check or dividend check. He says that upper income taxpayers will not get that money. But, Trump can't do that alone. Congress has to enact legislation, for that kind of a dividend. And also the Supreme Court now is also grappling with the legality even of the underlying tariffs. Some lawmakers and economists had legitimate concerns about whether any such payments could even possibly lead to an increase in inflation. But some states with surpluses, they're doing well. They are doling out money to their residents. For example, in Georgia, residents who filed state income tax returns are getting $250 to $500 of a dividend check. And in Virginia, folks who are Virginia residents, it is reported have received up to $200. It's not a huge amount, but it is something. New York State is sending inflation refund checks to certain residents who filed a state tax return. So don't neglect your filing with the state. Many times the state filing makes you eligible for the extra premiums. The details really differ from state to state, and for those of you who are curious about whether there's any possible state money coming to you because of federal programs such as the tariff programs, go to your email and type in www.kiplinger.com/taxes/state-stimulus checks for more information on these programs. So for the 2025 tax return, we'd like to remind you that the one big, beautiful bill allows folks to deduct up to $25,000 of qualified tips and up to $12,500 of qualified overtime pay on their income tax returns. Again, $12,500 can be deducted of overtime pay, and that's for overtime pay, and $25,000 of qualified tips can be deducted from taxation. The law has required employers to separately account for these amounts on the W-2, but IRS is not changing the W-2 to reflect those reporting rules. So the IRS is not imposing any penalties on employers, who don't make those changes on the W-2. S corporation owners, they are taxed on the distributive share of the firm's income. Now, they're going to be taxed. You're going to be taxed on your share of the S corporation profits, whether or not the income is actually distributed to you. So keep in mind, if it shows that you have a share or do a share of the income. It's got to be distributed to you, even if it's not distributed to you. And some S corporations, for one reason or another, wind up not distributing that income. If it's not distributed, you're still on the hook for paying taxes on that distributive share. So the some folks who have a tax exempt status for a religious exempt status or other exempt statuses. Um, any hanky panky by the founders of such organizations, such as a church, has led to revocation, IRS revocation of their exemption. What happened? Well, one church's membership primarily consisted of the founder and members of his family. They also served in leadership positions in the church. Now, the revenue from this particular church to the founder and his family, they used that to pay their personal expenses. Ooh. After an investigation, the IRS revoked the church's 501c3 tax exemption because basically the church's earnings benefited or were privately insured to just the family, not to not to anybody else. So the district court did not buy the argument that the payments to the family members were compensation, although the church tried to structure them as so. The keep that in mind. Stay in close touch with your tax accountant to stay abreast and stay within the compliance of these exemption rules. The folks who have jobs, the key limitations on retirement plans and accounts are rising in 2026. What can you contribute on your 401k? Wow, it's increasing, up to $24,500. If you were born before 1977 and can put in an extra $8,000, that's allowable. If you're age 60 to 63, the catch-up amount is $11,250. So, don't need to. You really do need to check with your tax accountant to be certain about those additional amounts that you can contribute to your retirement plans. Again, the 401k contribution can go all the way up to 24 for 2026 for the coming year, all the way up to $24,500. As I say, if you were born before 1977, you can put in an additional $8,000. That's $32,500, folks. For folks who are in the age bracket 60 to 63, the catch-up amount is $11,250. So check with your tax preparers, particularly, so you can start to take advantage of those additional amounts of money that you can put aside for your retirement if you are if you are employed and are in the older age bracket. The for IRAs, now the amount that you can contribute for IRAs as opposed to 401ks for this coming year, 2026, they've increased that for traditional IRAs and Roth IRAs, and they've increased it by $7,500, plus an additional $1,100 as an additional catch-up for folks age 50 and older. So if you're 50 or older, you can increase all the way up to $8,600 as a contribution That's as much as you can contribute or allowable, are allowed to contribute to your IRA or your Roth IRA, your traditional IRA or Roth IRA. The keep in mind that if you're going to be um, increasing your contributions to the IRA or your Roth IRA, keep in mind that there are income ceilings on Roth IRAs. That's why I say, please stay in touch with your tax consultant to not run, so you won't run the risk of over contributing and then be due some type of a penalty. But the if you are in that category where you do have a Roth IRA contributions, if you have an adjusted gross income of 242,000 or 252,000, that's AGI at 242,000 to 252,000. That is a limitation that you cannot exceed. Otherwise, you're going to wind up paying a penalty at the end of the year. For the what are the for some of the other limitations, please contact your a tax advisor to get clarification on some of those phase out amounts, so you won't wind up having, as I say, paying a penalty. the um, the qualified charitable distribution limitation for this coming year is $111,000. That's just for the folks who are making charitable contributions in that amounts. People 70 and a half, they can transfer up to $111,000 from an IRA directly into a charity. The 2025 limitation was 108,000. The if it's a qualified charitable distribution, if it counts as part or all of your yearly required minimum distribution, but are not taxable and they are not added to your AGI or to your modified AGI. That's the benefit of converting your charitable contribution to a qualified distribution. And that once you convert it to that category, it no longer is taxable and it's not added to your AGI or your modified AGI. Okay, the more folks, more low income folks, will qualify for retirement savings credits. The break right now is for certain individuals who put money in an IRA or into a 401k or 403b, SEP, or similar retirement plans. Now, the maximum savers credit of $2,000 for joint filers and $1,000 for others is limited at 50%, 20%, or 10% of retirement contributions, depending on your AGI. So that really gets a little hairy. And I would definitely work closely with your tax consultant so you don't get tripped up because of all kinds of limitations. My goodness, for 2026, per the One Big Beautiful bill, it phases out at AGI is over $40,000, 40,250 for single folks, over 60,375 for heads of households, and 80,500 for married couples. Anyway, check with your tax accountant closely on those qualifying limitations. Well, it looks like IRS is ending their program that you may have heard about, Direct File. Well, this program was first piloted in 2024. It really has not lasted that long, but it got expanded in 2025. and let eligible individuals opt in and get IRS's help. Um, so the 140,000 folks, just over 140,000, actually 140,803 filers used direct file to file their 2023 tax returns. And 296,000 and change filers use it for the 2024 tax returns. Users generally gave the direct file good reviews, but IRS is suspending it and saying that it's just too expensive and also too few filers actually used that direct file option. So one thing is for sure, putting an end to direct file would certainly benefit a lot of tax software firms, probably including yours truly. A lot of these tax firms have been lobbying Congress up and down and lobbying the Treasury Department to get rid of this free filing option. Okay, which obviously cuts down on their business. So IRS now wants to expand. They'd like to, expand that, but as it worked, that partnership between IRS and the tax and the e-file returns was full of problems. They claim the usage of that free filing program is dismal, and there's been even some instances of deceptive practices by some tax preparation companies. Okay, folks, I think what we will do is pop back to the major sticking point in getting an agreement between the two sides of the legislative branch federally, House of Representatives and the Senate, is of course the subsidies, expanded subsidies, if you will, which were needed from the very onset of the program. And again, as I will repeat, what more proof is needed that Obamacare is neither affordable nor sustainable? Let me share with you some articles that need to be really addressed, but particularly from the Democratic side of the aisle. This article from the Washington Examiner, dated October 29th, 2025, in the business section, entitled "Tiana's Take," and the article is entitled "Not One More Taxpayer Dime to Bail Out the Unaffordable Care Act." That's unaffordable. That UN is not the actual name. It's called the Affordable Care Act. But the pundits are calling it the Unaffordable Care Act. So the Senator Amy Klobuchar, a Democrat from Minnesota, lamented that without taxpayers shelling out another $350 billion to $450 billion on extending the Enhanced Affordable Care Act subsidies, a lot of folks are going to see their health insurance premiums increase, some nearly up to 300%, from $42 to $1,700 a month. Unbelievable. If Democrats do not succeed in increasing the $1 trillion cost of the Affordable Care Act's baseline subsidies by another 40%, in extending the subsidy enhancements, many folks are going to have to make some tough financial and lifestyle decisions, pulling money more from retirement savings, claiming Social Security earlier than planned. And, that's going to lock in a lower lifetime benefit. and put off a lot of medical care, particularly non-mandatory medical care, and certainly, of course, for retirees traveling less. So, if folks, if folks, will react as we expect, um, a lot of Americans are saying that they cannot budge a single inch on extending that Enhanced Affordable Care Act subsidy, which Biden originally intended to expire and agreed that those that expanded subsidies would end by 2022. Well, what happens? Now we're facing the end of 2025. After giving in to that enhanced subsidies, and now the one side of the aisle is demanding that even the expiration be reinstated, um, that expiration and not be followed, and that an extension of the of those subsidies be reinstated to the overall cost increases. Now, keep in mind that the previous administration's enhanced Affordable Care Act subsidies expanded eligibility to include illegal immigrants in American households earning between 400 and, as I mentioned, between um, 100 and 400% of the federal poverty level. And, that's almost $129,000 each year to more than $500,000. Only 7% of the public receives Affordable Care Act subsidies at all, and the overwhelming majority of the benefits of the enhanced subsidies goes to those middle class and the wealthy earners. Are we going to continue to subsidize folks who are in the middle class and wealthy for despite the fact that we're not able, basically, the federal budget is not able to afford the subsidy at all? Should the enhanced subsidies expire, the premiums paid by households at the federal poverty level annually, 32,150 for a family of four. That premium of 32 grand, just over 32 grand, will rise from zero to about 2% of their monthly income, about $55 a month. For a family of four earning more than four times the federal poverty level, or at least 160,000 each year, losing the enhanced subsidies would increase payments by nearly 3 grand per year, or five times as much for the family living at the poverty level. So the this battle will continue. Let's hope they get it resolved, which will hopefully keep the government open. And by the way, I think that it's a good time to just remind folks that um, our political leaders have really gone astray by really perpetrating a lot of claims that just are not true. And as a result of some of those claims, Social Security and Medicare um, are not even being considered for negotiation. The as President Trump in Congress fumbled through and got his one big beautiful bill passed, many people have been ignoring the elephant in the room. Social Security and Medicare are already heading into depletion. The funds are not in immediate danger, but according to the annual report of the fund's board of trustee, the Old Age and Survivors Insurance Trust Fund, the key part of Social Security, that can pay 100% of benefits only at the current level of funding, only until 2033. Where are we now? 7 years off. And the year after that, the funds reserve will become depleted and Social Security funds will be depleted, and they'll only be able to pay 77% of scheduled benefits. It's similar for the Hospital Insurance Trust Fund or Medicare Part A that pays for inpatient hospital care. It can also pay 100% of benefits only until 2033. Only, additional approximately 7 years off. And then after 2033, it's only going to be able to pay only 89% of the bills. Even worse, the depletion date has moved up 3 years from 2036 in last year's report to 2033 now. So many folks are calling the ignoring of the funding issue and the requirement for changing the rules for qualifying for these benefit programs. It's just totally irresponsible. There's no money to give even greater benefits to many people, including public employee workers, without real reform. Social Security is like a family paying off credit cards by going on a New Year's vacation cruise. A crash is inevitable under those circumstances. Now, in California, the only representative to oppose the so-called Social Security Fairness Act was Republican Tom McClintock. All the others in the California legislature voted to pour gasoline onto the fire, including Republicans like Republican King Calvert and Young Kim. In a free society, individuals are best equipped to provide for their own retirement savings with charities, congregations, family, friends, and other voluntary sources, not forced government redistribution. Uh, Falling short of this ideal, government intervention should aim to alleviate poverty only among the poor seniors, not crowd out private savings. To stabilize the system, some folks recommend replacing government administration of Medicare with empowering consumers to shop for plans. For Social Security, the retirement age should be raised and benefit growth slowed down for higher earners. Unfortunately, such reforms are remaining on what they call the third rail of American politics, meaning if you touch them and you died politically. Americans on the left and right both believe that they can and should have big government welfareism, but not have to pay for it. With reforms stalled as long as both parties insist on pretending nothing is wrong, Americans should shore up the 401k and other, retirement programs. So this is being hidden and not really being faced up to. And again, if we look at, for example, the California budget, which probably is reflected in a lot of the states' budgets, but the California budget has been cooking the books to hide the deficit. Legislative leaders would have us believe that the 2025 to 2026 budget agreement they forged with Governor Gavin Newsom is noteworthy, even heroic, in responding to financial problems caused by factors beyond their control, particularly President Donald Trump's tariff. So with the government's January 10th the budget being balanced without needing any new solutions, what they're saying. Unfortunately, since January in California, circumstances have changed, and California now faces a significant budget shortfall. The To a modest degree, the baseline costs of key programs, particularly Medi-Cal, which is Medicaid in California, those costs have grown faster than projected. And to a smaller degree, of course, the devastating LA fires have had a negative economic impact and resulted in increased state spending. But unfortunately, this masks the fact that they conjure up the facts. They've been overspending revenues for 3 years now, ever since the government erroneously declared that the state had an almost $100 billion surplus. That was long before the fires hit Los Angeles and Trump was inaugurated. Newsom's revised budget started the blame it on Trump syndrome, and legislative leaders quickly embraced it to explain away their chronic failure to either reduce spending or raise taxes. Okay, folks, you have to reduce spending and either raise spending or raise taxes to balance that income and the income, balance that income and the outgo, a condition known in the capital as a structural deficit. So all of the versions of the budget, including the semifinal one unveiled recently, would fill the gaps for another year with all kinds of payment deferrals, all kinds of loans, accounting gimmicks, and raised on reserves meant to cushion the effects of genuine emergencies. So the accounting gimmickry takes several forms. In California, as I'm sure in other states, such as delaying at $2.3 billion in support payments to community colleges and local school systems that are due in June 26 until a month later, thus significantly shifting them from one fiscal year to another. Some officials call these maneuvers solutions, but they really don't solve anything. They merely stave off the day of reckoning when officials runs out of tricks. That day will probably come a lot sooner than expected. The Were a public corporation that cook its books like the state government does in California and other states, its executives could wind up in jail for fraud. For some strange reason, however, California voters and other state voters continue to tolerate the chronic fiscal malpractice. So, folks, this malpractice will continue to go on. And begging the question, why should Social Security, Medicare, be off the table for negotiations? If you follow policy debates long enough, that's arguments that you never hear can become key components of the party's platforms. And now, to be fair, the GOP's well-intentioned engagement in overall debt ceiling dispute is limited by a short time Congress has to raise all the limits, all but ruling out credible reforms of reforming these two programs. But that will take a considerable amount of time and requires bipartisan effort. However, this reality is no reason to believe that the program benefits will never even be touched at all. Facing these two programs, no action from Congress means no money to pay for all the benefits. That means enormous cuts that will hurt the lower income more than anybody else. And so, folks, it looks as though we have reached the end of our long uh, update on the tax breaks and what we should be looking for. Keep in mind that we only have approximately 3 to 4 more weeks before the end of the taxable year. And what we will be doing next week is just focusing on what you can do with the few remaining days to lessen your liability or increase your possible refund. With that,
All right.
please contact us at 951-522-9877 or evjtaf1 at gmail.com or Cicely Tyson for the baseball team at 951-534-3838. Looking forward to seeing you
All
next
right.
week.
Okay, great job. Great job, Ev. Hey,
Thank
thank you guys so much. If you like what Ev has to offer and you find a benefit in the program, why don't you go to our YouTube channel and subscribe? And that is Studio W The Buzz on YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook. We're available on Alexa. And you can also download our free app, Android or Google, rather, is Studio W. Apple is Studio W. And the website, as usual, studiow.buzz. Great job, Ev. Looking forward to
Thank
seeing you
you.
next week.